Good morning, everyone. My name is Ankit Singh. I am a senior React JS developer at Paraguay Technologies. Today, we will be creating a simple React JS weather app. Before we start, we should have a very basic understanding of JavaScript and how event handling works at JavaScript, as well as we should know how to consume REST APIs from our browser. Before we start, we should know what is React JS. React JS is a JavaScript framework which was built by Facebook. React.js is a component-centric framework which only takes care of your V from your MVC framework. JSX is a special kind of XML syntax which can be used inside React.js component. Babel is used to transpile or compile the JSX code into simple executable JavaScript code. We are gonna build this kind of tool in this tutorial where there are few cities listed, and whenever you click on some city, the weather information gets updated, as well as when the last updated time gets updated, and also the selection gets changed. If you look at the code, this is a very basic JavaScript code where we have included all the React.js dependencies. React.js component can be created using React.createClass method. This React.createClass method creates a React component. This render function is essential in every React.createClass component. This render function returns some HTML code which can be rendered in the browser. React.js component can also include its state and properties. These methods are optional and can be ignored. We'll talk about these methods in detail in later tutorials. Here we have used getInitialState. That means at initially how the system should look like. We are also using dark sky APIs which will give us weather information. If you go back to our browser, if you see this application, we need to see that first of all, we should be able to list all our cities in our browser, and then on click of this browser, we are supposed to call some API call, get the data and render the required information in the browser. So let's do that. Let us create a simply new file and do it from the scratch. We are creating a new file over here which you would call weather app.html file. This HTML file should include my basic JavaScript includes. Once you are done with that, we'll create our body component and render some functions here. So here we are done, and let us print some value over here. We can say now let us open this HTML in our browser and see what happens. We can see hello React.js is being printed. Let us print hello React.js using a React.js component. To create a React.js component, we will create some script. That script type will be text/Babel so that the Babel can understand it needs to transpile this piece of code. To do that, let us just create a weather app. We're creating a React.create class component over here, and as you have known, we should definitely have a render function. So we are creating the render function. From here, we are supposed to return some kind of HTML component. So what we can do, we can simply write whatever we have written over here. But remember, always React.js component, the render function should return in a single entity. That means all your HTML component that is being placed inside your React.js render function should always have only one root element or root scope. This is used to create the virtual DOM and understand that what has changed in the browser from your last render. Once we have done that, let us just print this React.js in our browser. To do that, let us create a div ID where we will be printing this particular information. So we have done that, and let us just put this piece of code into our body element. Now we have created a weather app which returns hello React.js component, and now we want to display inside the root element. To do that, we can use another function called as react DOM.render and pass our application component inside our div. So I want to print this inside our root element. If you go back to our browser and refresh, we can see hello React.js component will display. We're gonna see the page source. You're gonna see this is being displayed from the React.js component. This way we can create a React.js component. Now let's create these cities. How it looks like over here. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to our hello component and copy this piece of code. This piece of code is required to create all the cities list and everything. We'll go one by one and understand what we have created over here. So this main body, outer, middle, inner, these class are used to vertically and horizontally center align these components. This has nothing to do with our React.js tutorial, and we can cover this topic in our later tutorial. So we have printed here a simple weather app. Let us just remove this piece of code and let's see what happens. Here we have used one variable called as last updated. As we have discussed earlier, in React.js component in render function, you can write HTML code as well as executable codes. This last updated add should be a variable which will give us the current date. So you can simply do like react.toString. Once you have done that, let us refresh our browser and let's see what getting being displayed. So you can simply see simple weather app and also the last updated time is being shown. If we refresh the application, you can see the seconds has changed. Now we need to display all the cities. To do that, let me just create a list of city elements. The list of city elements we can copy from here to save our time. So list of city elements gives me all the cities as well as the latitude and longitude of that particular city. This latitude and longitude is required to make the dark sky API call. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna display all this city in our browser. So to do that, we can simply do like this. We can we can iterate through all the keys of this dictionary so that we can get the city name. And once you have done that, I can iterate on it, and this should give me city name as well as and which index this particular piece of code is being rendered. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say return. Here I'm gonna return some HTML component. So I can do is div and I can print city name over here. I can close the div. Now I have already created a class called as citybox. If you uh, look clearly over here, we are not using class and using class name. So in React.js, if you want to give a class to particular div or any other DOM element, you are supposed to use class name instead of normal class. Once you have done that, let us just refresh our browser and let's see what happens. Something went wrong. Let us just debug it and find what went wrong. So we can see over here is return is not defined. So sorry, we have made a spelling mistake over here, and if we refresh it, this should work. Perfect, this works. But the variable name is city name. It didn't show the city name because we have given a string component over here. Instead of that, we should give an executable component. Executable component in React.js is enclosed under braces. We are going to also give a new line over here so that the HTML code looks good. If we refresh it, you can simply see it's being displayed, but it's in smaller case. So as you know, we can write executable code. I can write to uppercase over here, and this should change my city names. Perfect. So now this has been done. Now I need to include click function on this city list. To do that, I can simply write on click and give some executables. So I can say this dot on city name click, and I need to pass the city name. To do that, React.js gives us an information or a method called as bind. The first argument of the bind operator should always be this, and henceforth you can use all your arguments that needs to be passed inside the method. So I can here say city name. So this city on city name click should be a function inside my weather app component itself. So I can say this thing function, and it takes city name. Let's just put alert the city name and let's see if it works. If you do that, now here we are accessing this element, which is the scope of my weather app. But because I'm using map iterator over here, this context would be the context of my iterator. So to pass my parent's context inside this iterator, I can simply write this over here, which will pass my current context inside my iterator context, and this will be referred to my parent scope. Now if I refresh the screen, this should get displayed. On click of each city, I should get which city I have clicked. Now if you see, now I have clicked a city, but the city doesn't get selected. Let us just change that. So how do you know which city gets selected? To know that, we need to maintain some sort of state. This is where React.js shines. We have a default method called as getInitialState, where we can say what is my initial state of my component as well as how the state changes. So I can simply write getInitialState, and it should return me my first or basic state. So I can say over here is city name is empty. That means no city at initial load has been selected. Now, whenever my React.js component has changed, I can simply do this dot set state and change my state. Here I need to change city name so that I could know that which city has got selected. Once I do that, if I come back to my browser, I can simply say it works. And if you look at the last updated ad, the second shows as 28. Now if I click on a Pune or any function, this doesn't change. So we must have done something wrong over here. So we are doing this dot state and city name, and we are going to get initial state to city name. So every time this render function gets called, but we have removed this last updated ad. So we're gonna refresh this page, and it would give us an error because here our last updated ad is there. So if we click on Pune or Mumbai or Delhi or Kolkata, this doesn't change. So what went wrong over here? We can check if it gives an alert, it works, and whenever a state changed, so here we can see that our render function, if I do console.log over here and refresh our page, every time I click on Pune, I am getting inside render call. but the last updated time doesn't get changed because last updated time is written in the outside my render function. If I move this inside my render function and then now refresh my page, every time I click on a city, my last updated time will get changed. This is how render function gets changed whenever a state of my application changes. Now, I need to see if the city that I have selected is same as in the browser and I need to update or highlight this particular city. So what I can do over here is I can say here I can make this class name as dynamic. I've already created a class called it selected and this class makes sure it highlights the particular city. But this will highlight every city. Instead of that, I should know which city to be highlighted. So what I can do over here is I can say where class selection and default I can say is empty. Now if I can say if my selected city name to lowercase so that there is no case sensitivity issue is similar to my state ka city name dot to lowercase. If it's the same, that means I have selected my class. So I can simply do as class selection equals to selected. There are better ways to do this, but for our tutorial, we would simply follow this approach. Once you have done that, I can simply change this static code into an executable code. To do that, I just need to wrap this inside an executable braces and this city box should become a string and after that I can simply add dot class selection. Now if I refresh our page, nothing is selected, but whenever I click on some city, it gets changed. Also, my last updated time gets changed. Now we need to show our weather information. So what to do that, let us just put our this piece of code which calls an ajax function and gets the weather information. So we're gonna temporarily remove this piece of code and paste our other piece of code. So what it does, it calls an API and gets the weather information and updates in the state. So here I can see I have created a new state called as weather data and it has some sort of elements or dictionary keys. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna update here that initially I don't have any summary information or anything as such. So simply put, I can give empty string because I don't have any other information at initial load. Now what it does, it calls the API name by this API key and gets the data, and once it's successful, it updates the state with city name and weather information. So if you do that, let us just refresh our page and see if it works. Some error has occurred and you can see that we have written inline Babel script as weather script. So we can simply see, okay, we have given additional breeze over here. So it works. Now if I click on this, I can go to network tab and see if any HSR code is being made. So no particular city is being called, no API is being called. Let us just simply refresh and then see if it works. Sorry to make a mistake over here. Because I'm accessing it from a local HTML file, I have given JSON-P as the data type. So it will not show under XHR tab. Instead of it will show in the alts tab. So here I can see the HTML code has been called and I am getting the data over here. So my states is getting changed and I should be able to use that state. To do that, let me just copy paste the code from here and we'll understand what you have written over here. So I can simply go there, I'll paste it the code over here. So what we have done over here is we have created a variable called as weather information. This weather information, let us just put over here. This is an executable piece of code, so it can either be a JavaScript code or a JSS component. So what we are doing over here is this.state.city_name is present. That means I have got some data from the API call. In this case, weather information, I am creating a React.js JSS component, which means this summary information is the state.weather_data.summary. Temperature is weather data temperature, and so on. I am accessing all the state variables. Now if I refresh the screen, at initial load nothing gets displayed because this is undefined. At initial load, this.state.city_name will give me empty string, and that's why this piece of code will not get executed, and hence weather information will be undefined string. Undefined in React.js will not be rendered in the DOM. Now if I click on a Mumbai city, now I can see this API call has been made and I have got the weather information, and that gets updated in my browser. So this is way how we have created a simple React.js weather app. To recollect, we have created a React.js create class component, we have created the render function, and we have displayed the basic set of city names. After I have done that, we have added some bindings or on-click events, and on the on-click event, we are calling the API key and updated our state. On change of state, we are changing our React.js render function so that it displays the appropriate data in our browser. So we are able to create an awesome React.js app. But to tell this is not the best way React.js components are created. To create React.js component, we should either use Browserify, Webpack, or any sort of bundle tools. What those does, that allows us to create different React.js components and put them together into a single executable library function. We'll definitely talk about this in our later tutorials, and that's why you should definitely stay tuned. Till then,